Welcome to the Abundance Effect, where we empower ambitious women with practical tools to live their most rich and fulfilling life in business and beyond. I'm your host, Larissa McCooth. Let's get started. All right. This episode is a really special one because what you are about to hear was not originally recorded for this podcast. In fact, it was a private event I hosted a couple years ago for my community called An Evening Conversation with Bob Proctor. And at the time, this felt like a really powerful and meaningful event. It was a beautiful discussion. And today, listening to it now, it feels even more valuable. So I know I have to share it with you. I know you're absolutely going to love it. Now, if you're not aware of who Bob Proctor is actually the son of Mr. Bob Proctor. He is one of the pioneers in the personal growth and development space. But Bob wasn't just someone I learned from. He was someone I studied deeply with. I was actually a consultant with the Proctor Gallagher Institute for a number of years, training his programs, living his work, and absolutely watching it transform so many lives around the world, including my own. So Brian, I actually met him in that world. He used to work for the Proctor Gallagher Institute, and he worked with his father. And at consultant trainings, at events, he was just always the same. Grounded, warm, present, the kind of person that makes you feel seen within minutes. You know, after Bob passed away, I stayed connected with Brian and his work, and I followed his journey, and I even went deeper into some of Brian's programs that he created to carry forward and expand on his father's teachings. This conversation that you're about to hear, it actually happened right around the time his first book, My Father Knew the Secret, was released. And it's exactly that. This is not just theory. This is not philosophy. This is lived experience. These are Brian's stories. These are Brian's lessons. This is Brian's perspective from someone who didn't just study Bob's work, but he actually grew up in it. And it's a very unique viewpoint. So it's an absolutely amazing piece of work, especially if you've ever studied with Bob or heard Bob's videos on YouTube. Now, since this recording, Brian has continued that legacy. He's also now authored another book, 12 Easy Steps to Change Your Life. Stop waiting for that big thing. And this speaks directly to something that we often talk about here. Not waiting, not overcomplicating, actually getting up and getting moving. So listening back to this conversation, what really stood out to me the most is how simple these principles are and just how easy it is to overlook. Things like presence, self-image, so how you see yourself, daily thinking, how you treat people, how you respond to life. These are simple sounding things, but they are not surface level. And you're going to hear in this conversation, these are things that shape absolutely everything. So as you listen, don't just treat this like another podcast episode. Take one idea, one insight, one shift, and actually apply it, because that's where this work becomes real. So let's get to it. I want to officially welcome you to An Evening with Bob Proctor. We have some clients, some friends, some alumni, and obviously Bob Proctor present for this really special evening. This is something I've been dreaming about for a long time. I had my birthday, January 3rd, and then the day after my birthday, I heard Bob's voice saying, ringing in my ears. I have a lot of voices that speak to me. And that day it happened to be Bob's. And he said, why put off till tomorrow what can be done today? So I proceeded to message Brian immediately, and I said, my secret wish is to have you come and speak for my group on January 15th. Here he is. So many of you guys have studied Bob Proctor's work. Some of you have studied it more than others, and a few are new to this world. If you haven't studied Bob or his work, I really, truly do encourage you to take a look, really do a deep dive. So my intention for you guys is to gain a deeper understanding of, yes, Bob Proctor's work through Brian's eyes and stories, but I also want you to get to know Brian beyond his book, because he is a truly remarkable human being. And you can read the book. It's amazing. It is jam-packed full of information. But I remember the time I met Brian. And I was at a PGI conference and I was watching this guy just, talk to people. And all of a sudden, I somehow started talking to him. And I remember I was new, I was the new kid on the block, and he made me feel so loved, so welcomed, and so invited. And I think this is something that he really does have a magical ability to do, is to make people feel welcome, make people feel important, and make them feel comfortable. So that's what he's going to do with you guys tonight. So, Brian, do you want to introduce yourself?
First, I just want to say thank you, Larissa. It's an honor to be here. And when you reached out to me, that was like an easy yes. I remember the first time we met as well. And you've got just a magical energy about you. So this was really, really an easy thing for me to say yes to. For those of you that don't know me, I kind of come from a marketing background. I was born in Toronto. I was in real estate in Toronto for quite a while. And did very, very well in that business. My father talked me into coming into the business with him. He wanted some marketing help and stuff. And so I got to work with him for probably close to 30 years, which was amazing. We weren't just father and son. We were business partners. We were, best friends. So I came into the business and I really jumped in on the whole marketing aspect of it and started building an email list. Back before email list building was ever a thing, and really helped get our reach out there. So that was what I did to contribute with the seminars. And then I started writing this book. For those of you that have read it, I started writing the book probably 4 years ago. It was before my father passed away. And he knew I was writing the book, and we had a lot of fun with it. We talked about it often. It would be not unusual to find the two of us on the phone at 5 a.m. chatting with each other. And so I got a lot of ideas from him. We relived a lot of fun stories and really, really had a great time. I expected that he was going to be around when this book came out. I thought it was a really great way of honoring who he was. It was my way of sharing who Bob Proctor was from a personal standpoint. Everybody sees him on the stage or on YouTube or whatever it was, but I got to share who he was from a really personal perspective. So writing the book was an absolute joy for me. When he passed, it took me a few months before I could even start writing. It was a really tough thing to do. And then, if you've read the book, that first chapter was the first thing I wrote after he passed. And it was, what can I say? It helped me. And I really think it helped a lot of other people that were wondering, like, what happened? Who is Bob Proctor? So it's been a fun journey. The book has been very well received. For all of those of you that have read it, I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to it or read it. And it's been fun. I've been on kind of the podcast circuit for the last, I guess, 6 months. So that's when Larissa reached out and asked if I would chat with all of you. I said, yeah, I'd be happy to. So here I am.
Okay. So I love this book, and it's so brilliantly written. You can pick this book up anywhere and find value in it. And I'd love for you to just share about why you chose to do this way. I think it's been really powerful for us in our group calls. We've chosen I've chosen some random sections to just study and dive into each day this past week. And each nugget, each day, each couple of pages has been absolutely powerful. So can you just share a little bit about why you chose to write the book that way?
Well, one of the things Dad shared with me was that any decent book, you should be able to just pick up at any time you're struggling with something, just open it up and start reading and kind of find your answer. So that was kind of the premise of how I wrote the book. I thought I'm going to not write it as one whole story, but several stories and different lessons and different pieces. And then, I kind of structured how I wanted to put it together, but I wrote it in a way that you actually could just literally open it up anywhere and start reading and get value from it. You didn't have to read the page before. I don't know if that was easier or harder to do, but it just felt like the right thing to do. The consider points was actually my wife's, Corey's, idea, which I thought was really great. As I was writing it, Corey was editing it for me, and I was writing the stories, but then I was writing some teaching into the stories, and it didn't quite flow the way we wanted to. So she suggested, what if we pull the teaching part out and you just tell your story? And then we put the teaching part in the consider points for people to basically look at the end of a chapter and kind of reflect on how they could use that story and apply it to their own life. So that's really how that all came to be. I think it worked out perfectly.
It was absolutely brilliant. And I love how you were able um to pull out those lessons, because they're short lessons, they're powerful lessons. And if you guys haven't listened to the Audible recording, Corey actually, she speaks those last sections. She does those key nuggets at the end. So it's beautiful to hear the contrast. Now, rewinding back to the very first conference that I attended, you were pulled up on stage and you were asked to talk about this idea of seeing people with an MMFI on their forehead. I was new to the PGI community, the Proctor Gallagher Institute community. And I remember when I first walked into the conference, Corey was actually checking people in with Gina, I believe, at the front. I remember I just felt so warm, so loved, so welcomed. It was lovely. And then I met you. Then you were talking on stage about this whole MMFI thing. And I'm like, I guess people have obviously gotten the memo. I love how that was one of the lessons Bob taught you, but it was also expressed at all levels of the company. So, how did this lesson of make me feel important, MMFI, come about, and how has it played throughout your own life?
Well, that was actually a fun piece to write in the book. It's probably the second earliest lesson I learned from my father. As I mentioned, I was born in Toronto, so I pretty much grew up in Toronto. So I started school in Toronto. We then moved to London, England. So I started a new school in London, England. A year later, we moved back to a different area of Toronto. So I started another school there. A year after that, we moved to Chicago. So I started another school there. I was in fourth grade and already starting my fourth school. I was that perpetual new kid in school. And for any of you that have gone through that, you know what it's like. It's not fun. I can remember sitting with Dad in the den at this house in Chicago. You've often heard him talk about the house on Maplewood Lane. Well, that was the house. And I said to him, I said, Dad, I'm scared to start school again. I hate being that new kid. Everybody looks at you weird, and it's just awkward. And this is when he taught me this lesson. I learned this at 9 years old, and I have used it ever since. And I will tell you this: it has helped me in business more than anything else that I could probably put a finger on. He said to me, he says, Brian, you just need to put those 4 letters across the forehead of everybody you speak to, MMFI, make me feel important. He said, if you can make the person you're speaking to feel important, feel seen, feel heard, you're going to get along great in the world. You're going to make friends easily, and you're going to attract people into your life. They're going to want to be around you. When you think about it, you go to a party and you run into that one person that just talks and talks and talks and then tells you all the great things about them, how great they are. And it's like, oh my God, okay, that's enough. I want to get away from this person. But then you meet somebody that asks you engaging questions, and they're actually interested and they're listening. That's another key. They're really listening, and they're not thinking about, what am I going to say next? They're actually listening and engaged with you. You just want to be around that person. You do feel seen and heard. And so that's really what the lesson is all about. And it can be done really easily. It can be done with a sincere compliment. It can be done just by listening to somebody when they're speaking and actually really making eye contact and listening. Whatever you can do to make that person feel special. Dad liked to call it the impression of increase. And that was that if you can leave everybody you come in contact with that day feeling better because they came in contact with you, you've done your job. That's the impression of increase. And if you can do that, you're going to get along great in this world. And that was a lesson I learned at 9 years old. I've used it ever since. I think it's just a great way to communicate because you're actually present when you're speaking to somebody or talking with them. You're actually listening to them. You're not worried about what you're going to say. And if somebody tells you kind of a really cool story, even if you've done it, sometimes it's best to bite your tongue and not say that you did that too. Let that person relish in the fun of whatever their story was. Because sometimes if we say, oh, I did that too, and we did it, you actually take away from their story. So that's really what it's all about. Whatever you can do to make that person feel special, feel seen, feel heard. You'll make friends, but in the business world, you're going to make acquaintances that will really want to do business with you and that will send you referrals like crazy. And that's really where it works in the real world. So it was a great lesson. It was a good lesson. And the funny thing is I see my kids doing it. I taught my kids that when they were young. And I don't know if you've ever met my son Danny at any of those events, but my son is like a master at it. He just really takes interest in whoever is in front of him. And it's great to watch. It's kind of nice.
That's so beautiful. And I love how you've taken so many of the things that you learned from your father and have deliberately taught it to your kids. What would you say some of the key lessons are? What are some of the things that you chose to prioritize in teaching your kids that you learned from your father?
Well, certainly that MMFI was probably the number one thing. The other one really is probably my earliest memory of my father. And I'm sure you've heard of this story, Larissa. It was when he would tuck me into bed at night. When I was really young, Dad was on the road a fair bit, but whenever he was home, he was the one that would tuck me into bed. And I can still remember it as clear as day. I mean, I'm in my 60s now, so I'm going back quite a ways. I can remember laying in bed and he'd come and sit on the edge of the bed and he'd put his hand on my chest and he would start to talk to me about my day. And he would have me share all the great things that happened in my day. And if I had something bad happen, he would have me look for something good out of that. He'd have me look for the good in it. He wouldn't have me focus on the bad from it. So that was kind of a cool thing. But then after we went through that share, he then basically said to me, he says, Brian, you are capable of being, doing, or having anything you want in this world. He says, you're going to have a great sleep tonight. When you wake up in the morning, you're going to be refreshed. You're going to have a big smile on your face and you're going to have a wonderful day. And that's really my earliest memory of Dad. So it just, for me, when I look back on it, I think what a great way to build a strong self-image. And it really did for me. And I do feel that I am capable of doing anything I choose to do. Well, that's something that I started to do with my kids when they were really young. And I made them superheroes and stories. I did all kinds of things that built up their self-image and made them feel valued. When they were teenagers, I never had any issues with them. There was no troubles with the kids. They were just wonderful, well-adjusted, going through obviously times when you can have issues. And I now have grandchildren and I see my daughter doing that with her kids, doing the same thing. That's probably one of the best thing other than the MMFI that I think I learned from Dad at a young age that I was able to pass on. And I see it working its way through generations now.
Yeah, it's beautiful. My husband, is the first time he heard about that, I think he read that part in the book. He listened to it over and over. I told him about it from a conference and he was just absolutely hooked.
Mm-hmm.
So he does that practice with my son
That's
and
awesome.
very religious. He's like, what are the exact words? He's so passionate about really replicating that because as soon as he heard that, he's like, he knew the power that that could hold. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful practice. So that's his special bonding experience with him.
Well, it's fun, Larissa. I was actually sharing that with somebody on a podcast. His son is 16 years old. And man, he just loved that story. He said he started doing it with his son, and his son is 16 years old. And he said to me, he said, Brian, it was really awkward at first because at 16, this kid doesn't want his dad sitting on the edge of the bed and putting his hand on him and saying these things. But he said, it was awkward in the beginning, but now his son comes to like want that at night. And he says it's changed their relationship. So it's kind of a cool thing. It doesn't have to start when they're really young. Obviously, it's better if you do, but this fellow started with his teenage son and it's been a great experience for him.
Well, intention is everything. And if you are doing it from a loving and a heartfelt place, then they will receive it. They're just not conditioned to actually receive it in the beginning. You have to teach them that there can be a new way because it is coming out of left field.
Yeah.
So before The Secret came out, your father had already been in the industry for 45 years. And I know there were a few times where he had to start back up from scratch and things weren't always glamorous with fancy suits and nice shoes and private jets and riding at the front of the plane, at the back of the car. So how did your father keep an abundance mindset when the money wasn't there yet, when he had to start all over again, when he had to keep stepping away from home to be away from his family? So what did you see him do, or what did he do to maintain that abundance mindset?
Yeah, here's the interesting thing with Dad. When that part of life was happening, he didn't hide me from it. And I think that was a really kind of a cool thing. He shared with me when he was struggling. He would openly say that, this meeting didn't go well. There was only, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that showed up. He had no issue with that because he knew that he was teaching me persistence. And he basically said to me, he says, Brian, I know that the information I have has value and will help people. So he was just committed to deliver it in whatever way he could. And even during the tough days, he would say to me, he said, yeah, it was a tough day today. I didn't reach the people I wanted to, but he was so committed to it and knew that what he had value that he just kept on. And so I got to see him at times when it was a struggle. But I think the lesson I learned was not a lesson that he physically taught. It was in watching him. And it was in watching him persist. He said there a couple of chapters in Think and Grow Rich were really big for him. One was decision, and the other one was persistence. And I look at my father and I think, man, he was persistent when it wasn't going well. But here's the thing. He always knew that it was going to be great. He had a vision that he was going to reach people all around the world, and he was willing to do whatever it took to get there. And he spent a lot of years. The secret, when that finally came out, he was 72 years old. And that's when it propelled him to a whole nother level. So it wasn't like this was something that happened quickly for him. He had times when he did really well. He had other times where it was a struggle. Once The Secret came out, things kind of exploded for him. But when that happened, it was not a surprise. He knew that that day was coming. And he knew that if he just kept his focus on what he was doing and held that image that he was going to be that success and kept teaching and delivering as if he was that person, he would get there. And that's a valuable lesson right there.
It's huge. It's super powerful. I feel like a lot of parents are going to really reevaluate and take a look at how they're talking to their kids. And I feel like the more authentic we can be, the more they're going to have those time tested and true lessons.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's easy to want to paint a picture that is all glamorous and all simple and all easy. And we do want to focus on the good. However, I love how he really did bring it in as a lesson. Apparently, everything with Bob Proctor was a lesson.
It certainly could be. It certainly could be. But the great thing, Larissa, was that he always hung on to that image of the success he was going to be, even when he wasn't. And he always had that, he knew it in his heart and soul that he was going to get there. And I think for anybody that's watching this, that's maybe going through challenges, just know that you are going to get there. And if you can hang on to that image, even through the tough times, it'll help you get through the tough time for sure. But that is what's going to make it happen when you have this inner knowing that you're going to get there. And when you do, it's not going to be a surprise. It'll just be a kind of an anticlimactic end of the journey, really, I guess.
Mhm. And beginning of another one. So when the law of attraction, when The Secret came out, the law of attraction gained a lot of popularity. It became a huge buzzword after the movie came out. So what does the law of attraction actually mean to you? And how do you see it play out in your life as well as how it played out in your father's life?
Well, really, the law of attraction, Larissa, is just a kind of a sub-law to the, law of vibration. And that is you attract to you whatever vibration you are in. And here's an easy way to think about it. I have somebody that uh, it's the best way to put this that's kind of politically correct. I have somebody that I have to talk with frequently that is not of a great mindset. They're always focused on the negative. And boy, I just don't want to talk to them very often, but I do because they're somebody fairly close that I need to. So I do, but I don't talk to them as long or as often. But here's the interesting thing. They're always focused on the negative. So they seem to be attracting so much negative into their life. It's incredible. There's always something wrong. Whereas when you see somebody that's always focused on the positive, negative things happen. I mean, we're not immune from adversity. Bad things will happen. But if we're focused on the positive, that's the vibration we're in. We're going to attract more positive into our life. And when bad things happen, it's not going to affect us as badly. So the law of attraction is really about getting yourself into the vibration of the way you want to live, what you want to have in your life, and owning it, just knowing that it's yours. And when you get in that vibration, and you're in harmony with it, you will bring those things into your life naturally. Now, you've got to go out and take action. And that was the one thing The Secret never really covered. And that's a big part of why that was the last chapter in my book. I really think it's important. We need to step out and do something to bring it into our life, but we have to be in harmony with the good that we desire. And if we are, we will naturally gravitate towards it. That's the easiest way I can describe it.
Beautiful. It was definitely, we actually read that last chapter. I believe it was last Friday, and we all got into serious action mode.
Yeah.
So, what do you see when people are trying to use the law of attraction that they just flat out miss? And what would you love people to actually pay more attention to?
Well, that's an easy one. So many people, they see The Secret or they hear about law of attraction and think, well, if I just dream this, it'll come into my life. And that's not really the case. It's not to say that it won't. Most people, they just dream. They don't make it a goal. They don't make it a focus. They don't do persistent activities that are going to get them there. They just dream if this comes into my life and think that it should. The key is that, yes, you dream about it, but then you have to visualize it and really picture it happening. And then what can I do today to get me one step closer to that vision today? That's the difference. And that's what's going to get you there. Most people are looking for that big thing to happen. And what we don't realize is usually some of small things that will bring that big thing into our life. And if we get zeroed in on what can I do today that's going to get me one step closer to my goal, my dream, that big vision I have, in a matter of 6 months, 8 months, a year down the road, a little step every single day, all of a sudden you're going to be there and you won't even know how you got there because it was just little steps. That's the key. It's just all you got to give thought to is what can I do today? What one thing can I do that will get me one step closer to it? That's what's going to get you there.
If you guys like that, I think you should write that in the chat, affirm it, write it in your notebook, and then write in the chat, what can I do today? What one thing can I do today? Quick pause. If this podcast has been helping you think bigger, move differently, or face what matters, I'd love for you to leave a rating and written review on Apple Podcasts. It helps the show grow, and it helps more people find these conversations. Now, back to the episode. If you have an idea, write it in your notes, because you could take action right after you're off this call.
Well, one of the things I do, Larissa, is I've got this little pad here on my desk, and every night I write down 5 or 6 things that I want to accomplish the next day, and they're all goal achieving activities, something that's going to get me there. And it's sitting right here on my desk. So when I get up in the morning, I have a bit of a routine that I do, but then I get focused in on these things that I want to accomplish. And I just hammer down and get it done. And what I find amazing is that it gets you focused. It gets you really goal oriented. I get so much accomplished in such a short period of time that I can go off then and go kayaking or fishing or whatever the heck I want to do, because I've done so much, because I've actually been focused on tasks that will help get me closer to my goal. Most of us don't give that any thought or energy.
Yeah, that's the $25,000 idea. And I think the one thing I want you guys to remember, Brian starts with the first thing and he finishes it. And then he goes on to the next thing and he finishes it. And then he goes on to the next thing and he finishes it. So the secret to this is actually finishing the things on the list, having the things on the list. So it might seem simple, but you're actually doing things that are truly important, even if they don't take a lot of time. Some of them might be shorter tasks, some of them might be bigger, but they're all leading into something that's absolutely pivotal and profound for you. Mm-hmm. So goal achieving activities, big star with that. Now, Bob was a fan of James Allen's Serenity and so many other beautiful pieces of work, but he was truly an example of someone who chose to respond instead of react. He was just so calm and so cool. And I remember there was a time, I should have worn it. There was a time where Corey was up on stage talking about the beautiful necklace that I think it was, did Bob make her buy a necklace or earrings or?
Yeah, he had to buy some earrings and then he went and bought her the necklace. Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember when she was talking, she was like, I wanted to do things. She was a little uptight, and Bob came up to her and gave her an affirmation. And I wrote it down, and it was, I'm so happy and grateful now that I let everything in my life flow free and easy. And you actually wrote about it in your book. When I saw it, I was like, I've written this 100 or 1,000 or a few thousand times with my right hand, with my left hand, slowly, quickly, many, many times over and over. And it made a world of difference to me. We have some clients that have done that too. in our community, but it really has been a phenomenal reminder to let things be easy. Now, that's a really great strategy for me and for many of my clients. I was thinking today, as I was preparing for this talk, I have a 6-year-old, and when everything goes his way, everything is so free and easy.
Mhm.
And like I was mentioning to you before the call, my 6-year-old loves listening to Bob Proctor and his teachings. He prefers Bob Proctor over many other contemporary speakers in the world of personal growth and development. And he also listens to Brian. He loves Brian as well. Yet he's 6. So when things don't go his way, he can get quite reactive. How did your father teach you and your siblings this message of being responsive instead of reactive? Was there some kind of magic tool, some magic pill, some magic fairy dust he sprinkled over you guys? Or
Well, let me
I
see.
just can't imagine you having a temper tantrum ever, but I'm sure it's happened once.
No. Well, it's funny. I mean, I have a brother and a sister, and I will say the three of us are all different. I'm probably the chillest of the three of us. Best way to describe it, I guess. I've always been fairly calm because I'm so close with my father and we did so many things together. I really just learned by his example. And I always saw him going after things and doing things in such a calm way. And for me, I personally feel that you bring more into your life, you will attract more good into your life when you are calm and you respond. When you react, you push people away from you. You will push things away from you. When you're in a calm, easy state, people will naturally gravitate to you. And I just kind of learned that naturally. Now, Dad had, I don't know, you probably remember this.
I have the other two, and I couldn't find that one today.
Oh, there you go. So he had this thing, and I've got it on my desk. Not that I need it, but I just like to have it. He called it a react and respond coin. And one side of the coin is smooth, and it says respond, and you're in control. The other side is rough. It says react, and you lose control. Think about it. When something happens to you, if you take a step back, you just take a couple of minutes to think about it and respond calmly, it can smooth everything else. When something happens, and if you just react and you punch right back, well, you can escalate things in a really big way. And that's really all this was about. And he had this coin done in this way that you could have it in your pocket. And for people that were challenged with that, some people are naturally reactionary. They would have this in their pocket, and you could feel the smooth and the rough side. It would keep triggering in your mind to respond rather than react. So it's just something I naturally learned from Dad. I've always been kind of a calm, easygoing way. I mean, Corey will tell you, it's just kind of a natural way of being. But I find that when you're in a calm state, you will calm other people around you for sure, but you will be more open to the good that's out there because you're not forcing anything. You're not trying to, bull through something to make it happen. You calmly just do what needs to be done, and you just naturally bring things into your life in such a smooth, easy fashion that makes it enjoyable. And it makes your days a little more enjoyable.
I love your perspective and how you just said, just calm, smooth, easy fashion. It just makes it so gentle
Yeah.
and so powerful. The Chinese say water is the most perfect element, the most powerful element, because it can wear away rock and it can sweep all before it. And it's all about the flow, and it's just all about fluid movement, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, anyone that knew Bob Proctor for more than 5 minutes knew that he encouraged everyone to do one thing, and that was study.
Mhm.
He studied right to his passing day, and he studied for over 60 years. And I think the beautiful thing about it is that he didn't just study trendy things, he really did study timeless principles. And what was it like? I know, especially at the end, but also I'm sure throughout your life, what was it like to study with your father?
It was actually enjoyable. As a young boy, he never forced me to study any of this stuff. But he always left little books out and around or put them on the nightstand beside the bed or just left them out for you to see. And so for me, I just naturally gravitated towards it. He just knew the importance of study. And the reason for it is really for your mindset. That's the whole key to it. And, that Think and Grow Rich book, for those of you that don't know, he was given this book, Think and Grow Rich. He was given that book in October of 1961. Well, I was born in December of 1961, so I was there for that whole ride. And that book, he studied every single day. And when I'm up in Toronto doing something, if I'm up there and I'm in Dad's studio and I'm doing a recording or a meeting or something, I always say to Linda, his wife, I said, "Can you get me his book so I can use it?" Sure. She give it to me. And that book, I mean, just holding it, I can feel my father. Um, but here's the deal with this book is you knew he studied it every day. It was held together by a great big rubber band. And when I took the rubber band off, I'd open that book up. It would just fall apart. I mean, think of how many times you got to read a book that it gets to the point that it's falling apart, right? And the last 6 months of his life, I spent most of it in Toronto. I went and basically lived at the house with them, helping Dad. And I watched him. He studied that thing literally until the day before he passed away. He still studied every single day. He just knew that mindset was everything. And if you saw the way that he moved in the world, even when he wasn't doing well, you knew he was well studied. And that's the purpose of it. The purpose of study is just for mindset. It's not to gain crazy knowledge on how to, whatever it may be. It's really it's how to gain a better mindset, to live a better life, and to do more with your life. That's really what it was all about. So it was very, very important to him.
Yeah. And so, how have you applied the concept of studying to yourself? Like, what do you do similarly? What do you do differently from how your father approached studies?
I'll be the first to say, Larissa, I don't study as deeply as he did. I'll come fully clean on that. I just don't. He really studied. I certainly got so much of it naturally because he was my father. So, I learned it. But I always have a couple of good books and I always read something every day, even if it's a few pages. I maybe don't dig into it as deeply as he did, but like my backpack, if I'm traveling, I've always got two or three good books in there. Power of Awareness is one of them that I really like right now. Your Invisible Power by Genevieve B. Rand. I really like that one. There's a couple of books like that I forever will open up and just read a little bit. Um, it's for me, it's what it does to your state of being when you read books like that. I think it just puts you into that expectancy that you just know good things are happening. And when you come from that place and you live that way, good things do happen to you because you're just in that zone, for lack of better words.
Beautiful. And so, what are some of your other top favorite books that you tend to come back to over and over again?
Over and over again, certainly Power of Awareness and Genevieve B. Rand's book. If I was to pick another couple of books that I go back to a lot, it's what I mentioned to you earlier for your son is Ogmandino books. Not sure what it is. Ogmandino books I've always just resonated with. They're short, easy to read books. They're usually parables, but they're really written in just a clean way that I don't know. For me, have always put me into a really good mindset. I really like Ogmandino books, and I was fortunate enough to meet him when I was younger, and he was a very, very special man, and he has a unique way of writing that just sucks you right in. Richard Bach, I really liked his stuff. When I was really young, I read Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which is a great book to read if you're a teenager or something along that line.
Thank you. Taking notes, lots of notes. So, one of the things that I loved about your father is the power of repetition. He's had us read articles and pages for weeks and months on end, and this is something he did regularly and he would encourage his students to do. And one of the things I remember, one of our clients, she read the decision article for 30 days and she said, it's like day 27 or 29 and I'm just cracking this thing open. So she continued for another 30 days and she was really enthusiastic about this. But what was beautiful is that she really started to see the depth in the words of a simple article. And there is power of repetition because when you do come back to the same concepts, when you think about what specific words or sentences or sound bites really mean and how they apply to you, how they apply to your life, you go below the surface. And that's something your father was absolutely brilliant at. He took these complex spiritual and philosophical concepts and made them really accessible to people. And these days, so many people are living their life on the surface. They're looking for quick fixes, or between iPhones and AI and automations and everything. Like, machines are great to
Mhm.
help save time in certain areas, but machines can't help you reveal who you really are and what you're meant to do on this planet. That takes time. It takes discipline. It takes getting up and succeeding and failing and then evaluating, and getting up, succeeding, failing, evaluating over and over and over again. Is personal growth. I think you said this in your book, personal growth has no finish line. So as long as you're combining this information and action, you keep evolving and becoming more of who you are. Good things take time. And that really is how legacies are created. You can't copy and paste that. You need to find your own voice among the noise in this world. So, what would you love to see for your father's legacy and body of work? Because things seem so simple, they just flowed out of his mouth. Yet, you know what went into some of those sentences. You know what went into some of the ways he said the phrases, and the intonations, and just every nuance was so purposeful. What would you love to see for your father's legacy?
Well, that's a heavy question. So for me, yes, he was all about the repetition. He said, if we want to change a paradigm, we want to change a way we do things, the way we think about things, we need to do something repetitively until it's changed. And he loved affirmations for that. Dad wrote affirmations out every day. And a lot of times we think, oh, that sounds kind of silly. I'm not going to do that. It really works. I mean, he had a book that he wrote affirmations on every day. And I've got one here that I write out an affirmation every single morning. It's one of the first things I do. He basically said, if you told yourself a lie often enough, eventually you'll believe it. And that's really what an affirmation is all about. It's to write in present tense in a positive way you want to be, the way you want to live your life, how you want to see your self-image, how you want to act in this world. And if you're not that person yet, write it out and then just keep writing it out. And you keep doing that every single day, eventually you will become that person. As far as how I'd like to see my father's legacy, that was a big part of writing this book, because I really felt this was a good, clean, easy way for people to realize who Bob Proctor was as the man that you see on stage from a really private perspective. So it was important to me that people would get that and see that, not just see who he was on YouTube now. I certainly think, with today's technology, YouTube is a great thing. I mean, my father's going to be out there forever because of things like that. So that's kind of cool, really. I'm forever being fed up stuff of my father, which on some days is really tough and other days is great. So I think his legacy, fortunately, will live on just because of the technology we have today. But for me, it's doing things like tonight, just being here with you all and sharing who he was and what he taught me. I think that carries on his legacy in a way that's maybe a little more heartfelt. And that's important to me.
Beautiful. And one of the concepts that Bob taught that's also on a coin is the universal wealth strategy, upside down, inside out. And I think this is really important because this identifies how we should really truly live, our way of being. So, what does upside down, inside out mean to you, or how do you explain it in your words?
Yeah, so it's probably better I explain it in my words, because when Dad first came out with that, I'm like, what? um, First up, I will get into that in 1 second. I just saw a comment here. Jennifer just said she just read Jonathan Livingston Seagull. So, Jennifer, I have to tell you then, if you've read that, the next book you want to go to is another one by Richard Bach. I believe it's called Illusions. Also, a really cool book. And it's a what's the best way to put it? It's a great way to discover how to get outside of your head, how to open yourself up to more than what is. Anyway, for whatever that's worth. So the upside down, inside out thing, how he meant it was that um, from upside down means that we need to get tuned into the infinite and to allow the infinite to be basically from upside down, come in and through us. And then from the inside out is to take that, harness it, and take actionable steps on what's coming through us into our results, into actions. That's probably the easiest way to describe it. And that is really getting in touch with intuition, whatever is guiding you. When you hear a voice and you're in touch with something bigger than you, and you feel that, that's what the upside down that's coming into you. And the inside out is just by taking action on these things that come into your head and getting out and doing things. That's when you're going to get the results, is when you actually take actions on these things. One of the things that Dad taught me, Larissa, at the end of his life that I probably resonated more than just about anything that he's ever taught me. And it was probably because of the state he was in. He said to me, Brian, keep talking to me. Even after I'm gone, keep talking to me. And he said, do it in a quiet place, in a relaxed setting, and you'll hear the answers. And he says, you could think they're me. You can think it's intuition. It doesn't really matter. He says, but what you want to do is really be in touch with whatever that is that's coming into you, whatever those answers are. And I have started to listen to my intuition so deeply and so strongly now since he's passed that I can tell you, I feel my life has been incredibly perfectly driven because I'm actually following my intuition. How often have we felt something and we didn't do it? We think, oh, I should have done that. Or we felt that, oh, we shouldn't do that, but we did it anyway because somebody convinced us it was a great idea. And it's, oh, I shouldn't have done that. When that idea, that first whatever comes in, that's pure intuition. And if we can follow that and let that guide us, we'll be in a great place. It's after that comes in, we hear all these other voices. Those are usually our paradigms attacking whatever that intuitive hit was. And if we can listen to our intuition more and really follow it, let it guide us, I'm telling you, life will be a little better. I've done things, I can tell you, in the last year and a half that are things I wouldn't have normally done by any stretch of the imagination, but intuitively I felt I needed to do it. And because I did some of these certain things, my life has opened up in such a bigger way because I actually listened to it and acted on it. That's the key.
I love that. So I have some rapid fire questions,
All right.
maybe moderately rapid fire. We'll see. We can do them in a calm way. What chapter of your book was easiest for you to write and why?
Easiest for me to write. Easiest for me to write was probably the attraction chapter, how I brought Corey into my life, my wife. Here you go. That was the easiest one.
Beautiful. Self-explanatory. Most challenging chapter to write and why?
So the most challenging chapter was the first chapter, the final lesson. It's also my favorite chapter because I think there's just so many powerful lessons in it. And it was the most challenging because it was the first thing I wrote after my father passed. It was hard. It was hard, but I put my heart into it. And when we were editing the book, I felt it was really important that that had to be the first chapter. I don't know why, I just intuitive, that was it. And I always felt the action had to be the last chapter of the book. Anything else in between, I felt could move around, didn't really matter. But those two bookends, I felt were really important. And so that was definitely the toughest chapter, but probably my favorite chapter at the same time.
I don't know if I have actually talked to anyone that hasn't bawled their face off reading that chapter. It really is so powerful. I listened to it again, I listened to the Audible version and I was walking and it's cold and my tears are streaming down my face. And it's so beautifully written and it really does show the power and the dedication that your father had.
I can tell you, I had many tears over that chapter. That's for sure. Yeah.
Now, you referenced 2 pages of Thomas Troward's book that your father was studying at the time of his death that were open. What were those 2 pages?
So it's an older book, so I don't know what it will be, but it was page 92 and page 93, chapter 9. It's beginning of chapter 9 called Touching Lightly.
Yeah.
There you go.
Read that a few dozen times. And that really does personify your father with the whole calm, beautiful gentleness that he had.
Yeah. Well, here's another cool thing. You talked about earlier about his studying. Dad had a book holder, and he would have this book opened up to 2 pages. He'd have it open, and he could study those 2 pages for a week, sometimes even a month. Just 2 pages. Think about that. It was always a good book, and it was always a book that was kind of deep. And what he found was that the more he studied it, the more he would see in it. And as he changed his viewpoints of what he was reading, he would see different things. And it opened up so much more to him studying that way. So it was kind of unique.
Next question is, if you could do your life over again, what would you do differently?
I don't think I'd do anything differently. I'm the first to say I've had some hard knocks in my life, and I've had some great knocks in my life. Would I take away any of the hard stuff? Probably not. Sure, it'd be nice to not have those things happen, but I know for me that everything that's happened in my life has shaped who I am today, and I like who I am. I like what I'm doing. I love where I'm living. I love everything about my life, and I don't think my life would be exactly this way if I changed anything. So I'm okay with even the bad stuff that happened in the past. I think to frame that, Larissa, one of the things that I learned that was really important, and it's in the book, I can actually remember where I was sitting. I was living in Florida at the time. I was sitting at my desk talking to Dad, and it was all around forgiveness. And it was such a valuable lesson. When we look past in our past life, we'll have things that whether we did or somebody else did to us that can create blocks for us that weren't good. We need to learn to forgive, to let go. Dad always said, this was one of the conversations we were having. He said to me, he says, we don't forgive to forget. We don't have to forget what happened, but we need to let go, clear the energy around what happened. And the forgiveness is for us. It's not for the other person. We don't even need to let the other person know that they've been forgiven, but we can forgive them for us to free us of that thing that's blocking us. And sometimes that can be ourself as well. In the book I write, I hung into a relationship way longer than I should have. And I was punishing myself for what I did to me for hanging in for so long when I knew I shouldn't. And I needed to learn to forgive myself as well. And so, I think that's how we get through some of the hard stuff that's happened in our life. We need to learn to forgive, to let go. We don't have to forget, but we need to let it go. And when we can do that, we can be a better version of us today.
That's beautiful. And if you could choose one piece of advice that everyone here should follow, what would that be?
Oh, that's easy. I wrote it in the beginning of the book and at the end of the book. And it's simply this. What would happen in your life if you were the best version of you every single day? If you consciously chose to be the best version of you every day, what would your life look like? I promise you, that's the best piece of advice I can give you.
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
And what does abundance mean to you?
For me, abundance is just a wealth of goodness. And that's what abundance is. It's not necessarily money. It's just, for me, it's a wealth of goodness. Abundance is just all that you need, all that makes you feel whole, that makes you feel good.
This has just been absolutely amazing. We're going to open it up to Q&A in just a moment, but how can people connect with you, support you? Where can they find you?
I'm easy to find, brianproctor.com. You can go there. You can sign up for our newsletter. I don't inundate you with spam or any of that nonsense. We literally send out 2 emails a month, one at the beginning of the month and one at the middle of the month. And it's just content. I'm not trying to sell you anything or do anything that way. That's where you can find where you can get the book, depending on whatever country you're in. Yeah, so I'm easy to find that way. And you can reach out to me that way as well.
And my mother calls me as soon as Brian's newsletter comes out. And if I haven't read it in like half an hour, she's like, what do you mean you haven't read it? Have you read? So I like your newsletter. My mother gets on that newsletter very quickly. She is a super big fan of it. So
That's great.
So I'll read it at the end of the day, but she's like, as soon as it comes out, that's like one of the first things she reads. And I know it's always jam-packed full of information. So if you guys aren't on his email list, there's always absolute gold that comes in there. And if you guys have not picked up a copy of his book and or the Audible and or the digital version, whatever you want, go get it. And make sure you guys do a review, because that will help him be able to get the word out, and it'll help inspire other people to read it. I read this with my son. I've read this with my clients. I read this for myself. My husband and I read it. There is something in here for everybody. It is written so simply. So this is a super powerful thing. And he didn't ask me to say this. I love it. So I think you guys should all have it.
Thanks. Well, you know what? And I do want to say, if I haven't already, thank you. I saw that you left a review for it. So that does help. It helps with, I don't know, with the Amazon gods, with their algorithms and everything else. Here's one thing I want to share with you. When I wrote this book, for those of you that know anything about publishing, you don't get rich selling a book. So I'm not getting rich if you buy this book. I put everything in this book that I learned from my father that I know you can get value from. I feel in my heart that there's great value here. So, that's a good thing. But here's the lesson in it that I think we can all learn from is I've got big goals around this book. I just really want this out there in the world. You talked about a legacy. I just think this is a great way of showcasing who my father was. But more than that, it delivers, I think, some valuable lessons that if you act on and use, your life will improve. As simple as that. But here's the cool thing. And this is one of the lessons I learned from Dad. If we have a goal that's big enough, that inspires us enough, it will cause us to do things that we would never normally do. I've got big goals around this book. I would have never expected I'd be doing online calls, doing podcasts. Quite frankly, getting on stage. I was over in Europe in the summertime on a bit of a book tour, getting on stage speaking. If you knew me, that's not me. It made me incredibly uncomfortable. I'm certainly getting comfortable with it. But here's the cool thing. Because my goal was so big and was so important to me, I was willing to step out and do things that I would not normally do. And by doing that, I'm getting closer to my goal. And if you want to achieve something big, make sure it inspires you to step out and do things in a day you wouldn't normally do. You're going to learn a lot along the way, and you're going to attain something far bigger than you ever imagined.
Yeah. I really feel this has been such a beautiful opportunity to get to know you better and your father through your lens as well. One of the things I don't know if many people here know, but this particular week in 2019, I actually lost my father. And it was shortly after I started with the Proctor Gallagher Institute and studying with Bob. And when my grandmother had passed, I carried the weight of that for 20 years. It was really debilitating for me. But because of what I learned from studying with Bob Proctor, and I continued with my studies after my father had passed. It was a difficult time, but it was also a beautifully positive experience. I was able to frame it and celebrate the best of who my father was. And I know if it hadn't been for this work, it would have been a very radically different experience. And this work works if you do. All you have to do is show up. All you have to do is open one page of a book. You don't have to read the whole book cover to cover. It comes by showing up to a talk like this and taking a note and maybe reviewing it, maybe rewriting it, maybe sharing something you learned here with someone else in your world. This is not complicated stuff. However, it's powerful stuff and it changes worlds. And it really does start changing the legacies that were here. One of my personal missions is to radically expand lives and the lives of future generations across the globe. And like you've demonstrated, that has to start with you. Your father demonstrated it with you, you've demonstrated it with your kids, and now it continues down through the generations. And it doesn't matter what happened yesterday because your yesterday doesn't have to dictate your today. You can just make a new decision right now and continue to move forward. So I thank you to your father for continuing on all of those years because it's those little moments that have made such a huge difference. And thank you to you because I know that there are so many people that benefit from what you do and the lessons that you've learned through the ripple effect. So that's what we're all here for, to make our own little ripples across the globe. So Brian, thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us tonight. This has been absolutely delightful having you here. I know you've made a world of difference to everyone on this call. So if you guys haven't read his book, go grab it. Go to his website at brianproctor.com, grab his newsletter, and absolutely plug in because this information changes lives. And before you guys leave, I want you to look back at your notes, find one nugget, one golden nugget that you want to remember and carry through the rest of your week, because it's one thing if it's in your head, but if you don't do something about it, just like Brian said, it's just going to sit in your head and use up your mental real estate. It might be a good use of your mental real estate. However, we want to do things with this beautiful information that we've acquired tonight. And Brian, just given us such a wealth of knowledge. So do you have any final parting words or any final thoughts?
Well, I just want to say thank you, Larissa. I appreciate you having me on. This is fun for me. I get to share fun stuff about my father. And if I'm to be honest, this has helped me through a tough time by being able to do this because I was very, very close to my dad. So this has been great. And for me, a final thought is, all the good books, right back all the way to the Bible, all says we become what we think about. And so really think about what are you giving energy to? Would you be friends with somebody that talked to you the way you talk to yourself? Think about that. Make sure you speak to yourself well and make sure you hold a good image of what you want in this world. And it's not to say negative stuff isn't going to happen or come at us, but the less energy we give towards the negative and more to the positive, the better life will be. And we will bring more good into our life. So that'd be my final words for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was so powerful. Thank you so much for being here. The feedback on the abundance effect has been absolutely incredible, and we want to keep these episodes deeply relevant to you. If there's a topic that you'd love for me to cover or a question that you want help with, email bookings@myabundanceacademy.ca. There's a link in the description of this video. We're always listening. Your voice shapes this show.